very, very lucky today to have Adrienne Johnson from CareerSource Florida in Tallahassee. She is the CEO of CareerSource Florida. She was able to carve out a few minutes in her busy schedule to just talk to us briefly about what's going on in Tallahassee, CareerSource Florida, a little bit about commerce and what they do. Wanted to make sure that you were able to hear some state of thoughts, so I'll turn it over to Adrienne. Thank you so much, Adrienne.
Hey, good morning. Thanks so much for having me. Just want to confirm, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the chance to speak with you. I understand you're having your retreat, trying to think through your plans and strategies for the upcoming year for your local board. So I hope it's helpful to have a little bit of an overview of what we see at the state level and what our role is at CareerSource Florida. And how we really, can be a tool and a resource for you at the local level to help with alignment with the state goals that are in place. So I'll just start with a high-level overview. Stop me if you have questions as we go through, or we can always, do questions at the end. I'm happy to do it either way. But just to start off, just thinking through, this is, the federal workforce system is structured so that every state has a state board of directors. Just like at the local level, the state board is business led. So it's majority represented by businesses. And so that's what our team at CareerSource Florida does. We support that state board of directors. The board is governor appointed mostly. There are 2 legislative appointments as well. And they're really charged with a few key things for the global workforce system. It really comes down to ensuring overall that the system is effective, but they're focused on making sure that the system is accountable, that it's transparent, and that we are achieving outcomes for the folks that we serve at the local level, which includes both job seekers and businesses. So that's kind of high level what the board is charged with doing. And we do that through a couple of tools. The board has 2 primary tools. The first is policy making. So they are charged with the state level policies, both fiscal and performance and programmatic policy. But also they have a reserve of funding to allocate across the 21, in our case, 21 local workforce development boards across the state. Those funds are really intended to seed innovation and to find new ways to achieve the outcomes that we're looking for. You'll hear us commonly refer to those as the governor's set aside funds or the reserve funding from the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. So those are the 2 primary mechanisms that the state board has to kind of direct and guide the local workforce development board system across the state. I can tell you, I've been here at CareerSource Florida for about 2.5 years now. Prior to joining CareerSource Florida, I was with what is now the State Department of Commerce. I served initially as the chief economist and labor market statistics bureau chief, and then I also served in the workforce development deputy secretary role. And I mentioned that because we really work very closely with the Department of Commerce. As I'm sure you're aware, the Department of Commerce is responsible for supporting the policy development process, but also for compliance and monitoring. So we work really closely to ensure that when a policy is put into place, that on the back end, we have the ability through the Department of Commerce to monitor those policies and ensure that there's compliance. And so we're really trying to develop this feedback loop so that we can see our policies working and aligning with the goals that the board has. If not, how do we pivot and adjust? And if they are, how do we show those outcomes and make sure that we're really continuing to serve businesses and job seekers according to those goals? So that's kind of the overall process and relationship that we have with the Department of Commerce. We also have some other really important state partners, and I think it's important for you to know who they are and kind of how we got to the point of having so many different workforce partners that don't always sound kind of on the surface like they belong in the workforce system. But I think it's really key to know that a lot of what guides the activities and the goals of our network come back from the REACH Act, which was passed about 4 years ago by the legislature. And it actually expanded what we consider to be the workforce development system in Florida. It required new partnerships within at the state level, but also at the local level. And to that end, we've formalized a lot of those partnerships and gone even beyond what the REACH Act requires through a state plan that we submit to the federal government every year or every 4 years, I'm sorry. So some of those partners include the Department of Children and Families. As I'm sure you know, there are a lot of folks who they may be receiving assistance through either the TANF program or the SNAP program. And we want to make sure that they're not dependent on those programs long term. We want to help people find a path to economic self-sufficiency. And so the REACH Act really pushed us in the direction to make sure that there's a tight partnership and linkage between the customers being served through the Department of Children and Families, but also those being served at the network. And so we now have joint goals together with the Department of Children and Families, with the Department of Commerce, with the Department of Education and Elder Affairs, to make sure that when we have customers who could be effectively served by all of our organizations, that we're doing it in a meaningful way and we're not just passing people around. So to that end, we have a state plan that outlines how we do those handoffs, how we make sure that we're aligned in our goals, and how we are developing processes to do those warm handoffs and make sure that people are not lost through the system. I mentioned the state plan because I also really want to point out we have some lofty goals in that plan. We've gone above and beyond what the federal government requires of our network. One of the key goals in that plan that I always like to highlight is kind of to me, it's the North Star. And it's the goal to increase the labor force participation rate in Florida to 63% over the next, now it's the next 3 years. It was a 4-year goal set last year. And I mention that as important because we know we have a growing state. Our economy is really still performing well. Prior to the pandemic back in 2019, when I was chief economist at Commerce, the thing that we were always talking about was labor shortages. How do we engage people in the labor market and increase the skill set that people have so that they can engage with industry in a meaningful way and help industry to continue to grow and expand? After the pandemic and even before it was over for most other states, Florida went right back to that same posture. We had a very tight labor market. We were continuing to expand and grow and diversify. And so through the last 5 years, that has still been the story for us, is that we still hear from business every day that they need talent. And so part of our ability to do that is to help people engage in the labor force who otherwise would not be able to, or maybe would not be able to their full potential in the way that industry needs them to. And so that's where our network comes in, and the partnerships are so important. We have the tools and resources to help individuals who maybe otherwise would not have access to training, wouldn't have access to a job that could really launch their career. And so being able to provide those tools and services is critical. And bringing people from the sidelines and making sure that they're engaged in that labor force. So that's something that I always try to communicate with folks is it's more than just providing job training services and employment services. We're really trying to help the overall economy of our state function as effectively as possible and help meet the demand of industry. So those are some big picture things that we do. I'll go back to the REACH Act again and just highlight that we pull a lot of the activities that our team is doing from the requirements of the REACH Act. Things like letter grades. So as I'm sure you're aware, we rate each of the local workforce development boards across the state for certain measures. Again, trying to make sure that we have a level of accountability and transparency in our system, and that when we say we're reaching towards certain outcomes, that we're actually achieving those outcomes, and we have a measurable way to do that. And it goes beyond the federal requirements of the system, which I think is incredibly powerful. We're trying to use data to show and direct us to make sure that we're actually meeting the customer needs here in Florida, beyond just the minimum requirements. We have things like the industry and education consortia that our team kind of monitors and helps provide some assistance to the local areas, just to make sure that industry and education are getting together in the same room at a local level, and making sure that those partnerships are there, that the communication is there, so that our network can be responsive to changing education and training needs. So we also have the master credential list. If you're not familiar with that, this is a way for the state of Florida to have a catalog of credentials that are really guiding the way funding can be allocated for certain programs, for certain state and federal funding streams. And the idea is to incentivize individuals and training providers to pursue the certifications and training programs that are going to lead to the highest return on investment for both that individual who receives the training, but also the industry who really needs that training and needs those skill sets. So our team manages that and works with you at the local level to ensure that those training programs, the certifications that are needed by industry in your area, that those are represented on that master credential list. So those are just a few ways that we work with the local areas. Those are a few things that our team is focused on. But at the end of the day, we are here again as a resource for you, for Kedrian and her team, to make sure that when you run into roadblocks and hiccups and things that are not maybe aligning with the statewide goals, that we can find solutions for you to do that. I also wanted to mention, one of the things that we're really focused on here at CareerSource Florida is making sure that you as board members and also your chief local elected officials understand that we are here, we exist, we are a resource for you, and that you have a lot of control at the local level for what you do and how services are provided and how you engage with industry. And so if you ever have questions, if you ever need more information, it is an open invitation. We are happy to do things like this, come speak and share with you at your board meetings or retreats. But we're also a phone call away. So we're a resource for you as well. And just really want to encourage you to reach out. And we will try to have touch points that are specifically geared towards you as board members or towards your chief local elected officials as well, just to make sure there's an open line of communication and that we're here as a resource. So I said a whole lot. I am happy to expand on anything further if you have questions, or I can kind of leave it there, and you're always welcome to reach out later if you'd like to.